So, with the Clover and the Rock as my mentors, um, I decided to stretch my legs or my mind, I guess, in the sense within the spherical snowflake at this point. But I chose to go to another big rock. I chose the moon. So I like soared over the moon and as though like I was a plane, and then I went through the moon. It was like the moon wasn't solid; it was more like a cloud. Um, and then I visited like different elements and molecules. Um, if it makes any sense to discover what song they sang or what story they had to tell, um, to know what things brought them joy. Um, it was very curious, and I saw some really interesting things that I may elaborate in another discussion. Um, some of you will probably kind of figure out what I'm talking about. I'll screw it. I'm not going to be coy. The moon's hollow. In my opinion, the moon is hollow. It's a duck blind. It's been there a very, very, very long time, and it's housing a lot of things. But again, as I'm bouncing around like a pinball within inside the moon, just seeing and gathering knowledge, for some reason, all of a sudden I found myself on Mars doing the very same thing. And why there's a connection between Mars and the moon, I wouldn't know then, but I would know later what that meant. But I discovered a life form there. And I think what happened is that by discovering the life form there on the moon, it was like a puppy almost. It was like, ooh, what are you and what's this and where are you from and what do you do? So I think what happens is that I like found this and was like, what's your point of origin? And then it thought of Mars, and so then I was just instantly there. Not really sure about that baton handoff between Moon and Mars. I just went with it. So after discovering the ability to kind of ping pong around, I just started pinging through the solar system as easily as I was pinging around in my grandpa's garden. And so rocks and clovers became, planets and asteroids and things that were real and things that were artificially constructed. It was really pretty interesting in the sense that in space it seems like things are so very far away, and at the same sense, in an energetic sense, they're right on top of each other. So anyway, I was bebopping around and making all these discoveries and then finding out the similarities that were within these discoveries. And so I had this like flash of inspiration or knowledge or whatever, but it caused me to snap back to this energy that was my Sherpa. And I snapped back and it was like, I get it. It's all connected. Energetically, it's all connected. That's what you're trying to teach me. And then there was like this explosion of light. God, so much light. And it wasn't painful, but it was just like a cosmic denouement. Again, there's this damn ineffability again. There aren't human words, I think, to convey, but imagine an infinite number of souls simultaneously beaming or sending you unconditional love and support. That whole, I mean, that's where the stage light became the magnesium fire. It just, boom. There was so much to see and to, I don't know whether to say to know or to remember. The only other thing I have in the real world that I can compare is that I once sang in front of 12,000 people. And there is this pressure, kind of like being in a crowded elevator when you're on stage. And when you get applause, it's like the pressure of this happiness wave comes at you and just whammo. Yeah, it was kind of like that. It was kind of like getting appreciation and adoration, which I'll have to explain later, but I'll explain part of it now. There's so much adoration there because Earth is a hard place to be, and there are some souls that would rather spend a millennia reading through books and going through the Akashic record as opposed to stepping into this very fragile meat suit and coming into the Earth plane, which is like the wild, wild west. You can really get screwed up over here. And so that's where that sensation of gratitude and amazement, awe, why it comes at you from them. It was like being embraced in this huge energetic hug of astonishment and pride. So my awareness expanded, and then it was no longer just the entity and I. In fact, there were like hundreds of thousands of people surrounding us. It was dizzying, and all of a sudden this like new reality formed. It was much more intimate. If you've ever been to a play and then stayed behind after the play to meet the actors and kind of have an open dialogue with respect to the character and motivations, it was that type of feeling was manifesting at that point. And then click, I'm on this soccer pitch. It's a very well manicured lawn, just perfection. I didn't know if you wanted to play football or golf on it or what. But the first vibe I got was a soccer stadium. However, the stadium seating was unrealistically high. I mean, it went all the way up into the clouds. And then I realized from the circles on the end that it was a Quidditch pitch. And the multitude of attendees were actual souls. I would guess you would call it the heavenly host. But there were individual entities or entities that were there who identified as individuals and humanoid for the most part. I mean, some look like animals and some look like ghosts, and some were like ghosts from central casting. Some of them were just transparent people. Some of them were just like a surfboard. They were like these, or a boogie board. They were just these opalescent ovals that were opaque, but there was still like a wave of energy moving within them and just kind of undulating around. It was curious to me that seeing after all of these different myriad of possibilities of forms that you would project in this place that is non-physical. Obviously, I think it's for my benefit. So anyway, I then turned around to look at my Sherpa with the intention of asking, well, what do you look like? And as I turn, then standing there is the comedian George Carlin. I've run into so much friction from certain people because a near-death experience for some folks is spiritual. And to mention the comedian who brought us the 7 words you can't say, it's offensive. It's offensive to them. I thought it was cool. Not everybody thinks that. The curious thing too is that the human being who is called George Carlin hadn't died yet. I think he died 2009, and my experience was 2005. So who I was actually seeing is still kind of a mystery. But again, I was rolling with it. So he gives me this big gregarious smile. His eyes were, lit. They had like this twinkling. And again, that's kind of where I get the whole leprechaun type thing. But it had this wisdom, but there was a wit mixed into it. Because sometimes people who have a lot of wisdom, there's like gravitas or a sadness that kind of goes along with that. This was not present. This guy was like he had a cosmic whoopee cushion and he was ready to use it. But he gave me this big smile, and whatever this avatar was, he just looks up into the crowd and says, "Hey everybody, this is John." And this chorus of, "Hi John," just kind of like washed over me and just kind of circled through the stadium. I mean, it truly was a warm welcome. And then he says, "Everybody, John is from Earth." And there were like these gasps and oohs and ohs, and it's almost like watching fireworks and hearing all that going on. And again, that accompanying energetic wave that just washed over me, admiration and congratulations, and maybe even a couple of holy shitballs were in there, and I was just stunned. I mean, I'm standing there with God, or whatever you want to call this entity, revealing myself before the heavenly host, and they were in awe of me. I mean, I think like most dudes, I mean, you don't go 5 decades and not, have to jettison your underwear at some point, or have barfed on yourself, or, farted in an elevator. So, I mean, I'm thinking of all these things I've done in my past that I was like, why do you, whoever sold you this bag of goods, yeah, I didn't think I deserved it. But I think the logic that is associated with a soul's development is akin to like a Montessori school style of education. I mean, there's a fundamental foundation to all things educational, and not everyone is endowed with the affinity for all things. I mean, Brian may have been one hell of a guitarist and perhaps even a better astrophysicist. But perhaps his ability to be a lumberjack would be questionable. So that's not to say that astrophysics is more complex than playing guitar, and trolls, please type to someone who cares. But the point is that as we grow and mature, the complexity, or maybe our ability to bring in and understand complexity, increases, and that's going to happen at different rates. There's no judgment. It just is what it is. So there's places in the universe where a soul makes its first grand entrance into the physical dimension, and it's very limited in its physical experiences. Then there are other places that are more energetic realities. And so when you first move into those, again, it's very limited sensory input. It's a playground. But as your soul increases in knowledge and experience, and that experience becomes more complex, then you were able to access more complex worlds. And to me, it's almost like a video game in the sense you first get a video game and you first start playing it. You don't pick the easy level. You learn some of the tricks of what's going on, and then the programmer's mind or whatever the architect had in mind, and you go through there and you play it. And once you're done with it, then there's all these other options. Well, I can make it harder. I can change my character, or I can add certain attributes. And essentially, that's what we do. And every time that we have a reincarnation, it's like, okay, well, what level do you want to play this time? And what assets do you want to have? What ones do you want to work on? So there are places that are energetic, there are places that are physical, and then as you move up to the apex of, I don't know if Earth is the apex, but for this metaphor it is. So as you are gaining experience of both physical and spiritual, energetic, where this all kind of coalesces are different planets like Earth. They have a physical, spiritual, emotional dimension. But what makes Earth a masterclass is that there is deception. And there are also multiple experiments going on simultaneously with different entities. And like it or not, man, we're in a petri dish. But this petri dish also gives us a lot of chance for change and learning and transmogrifying things that we discover. So I know the petri dish might be disturbing to some, but again, if you think about it from outside of more of a human perspective and think it more of a energetic perspective, there are so many opportunities to learn and experience things that aren't traditional, that the Wild Wild West provides. It's not always a bad thing, but left unchecked, it could be a bad thing. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of experiments going on simultaneously of both overt and covert natures. And some of them are driven by, the powers that be that are here in, human three-dimensional space, but most are not. That's why movies like The Matrix and Inception, things like that, they're very interesting to me. I don't know if anyone remembers that show. It was on TV a while back, Fringe. But it's like that in the sense that you're exposed to something that is atypical and not traditional, but it is grounded in science, even if we don't understand the science. Asimov said, if it's sufficiently advanced, we'll think it's magic. So be it. That still doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and have an effect. But it was made pretty clear to me that you can't drop into Earth just because you want to. You got to be ready. And your mentors or guides or masters or whatever noun you feel comfortable with, those people will work with you on the things that you want to learn and then determine if you've got the experience points to actually take in that experience. And if you're ready. So the other thing too is that free will exists for us. And so if you want to come in here loaded for bear, but there's more than bears here, you're going to get your ass handed to you. So you're going to run that risk. But they will try to guide you. They will give you help. And even while you're here getting your ass handed to you, they can kind of give you a timeout. But your lesson is still your lesson to learn. So again, going back, there's like the words, energy, emotions that kept washing over me. I would describe them as like admiration or adventurer, explorer, hero, even famous. It's almost like we're reality TV programming for them. And they hope that they can learn vicariously through us. So I guess that the John Mathis channel is intriguing to some. So anyway, at this point, my attention is kind of drawn back to the Quidditch pitch. The data rate changes, and I look up to see ovals of light singing. above my head. And as someone who has spent nearly 2 decades singing, started singing when I was 6, I could say it was the most inspirational thing I've ever heard. And, pat myself on the back. I used to sing opera in 6 languages. So I've heard some pretty inspirational stuff. And this just was mind-bogglingly beautiful. Anyway, so it's like I had the experience, but then the data rate slowed and my connection to unconditional love, it like required more effort on my part to try to maintain it. And it got to a point where I couldn't maintain it. And so I was like, oh, I must be going back. And of course, being in that place, why? I mean, at that moment, Earth really held nothing for me. I mean, through this process, I'd learned to communicate through thought rather than a properly constructed sentence. It was much less cumbersome. My humanity, my humanness had also left me too. I mean, good God. Arthritic ankles, reconstructed knee, torn intervertebral muscles, just my accumulated injuries and physical and mental damages. I mean, they were separated from me as easy as taking off a hat that doesn't fit anymore. Years and decades of therapy here versus going over there and say, oh, that was just my character, and just hang it up and you're done. Illusions as reality and reality as illusions. Anyway, at that moment in time, I guess the best way I can say is that my life felt like a really poorly written script. And it is also made known to me that I am both the actor and the director. And so there's no finger pointing unless you're looking in a mirror. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. But as soon as that passed, and I was like, but I understand it now. And I don't feel like I've had that understanding in previous lifetimes. So I definitely have a bigger toolbox this time around than I've had in previous lives. And again, the message is pretty much, if you don't like the script, flip the script. You're in charge. So what followed from that was this very complex, tightly packed wave of energy that it's hard, even using like and as and metaphors, that there's nothing there. I mean, it was imbued within my energy, or it was revealed within my energy, having all the other extraneous crap pulled away. I'm not really sure, but it was just like I just had this knowledge or this awareness that this spiritual paramedic, those are the words that I can use that most closely conveys the energy imprint that was given to me, that there aren't words. There just aren't words. But I've had a decade or so to think about this. So I currently think that I agreed to be on the earth plane again, and to be there during a time of both great honor and horrors. It's like people waking up to the illusion of certain isms, the corruption and collapse of systems that have been in place or that we've leaned on in the past. these multi-layered aesthetics that we've become accustomed to are just going to come crashing and burning down. And as we reconstruct, there's going to be a lot of triaging that needs to occur. I don't know what part I'm playing in that, but I feel like that is the sandbox I am supposed to be playing in, which is why I'm compelled to do these videos and do these talks and do the writing and write books and yada yada. It's like whenever the opportunity comes through to work through me, I just let it go. It was, so I had this download, and it's like if someone could hand you an encyclopedia set and then say spiritual paramedic. Those two words do not convey everything that's in that encyclopedia. It gives you kind of a gist. So, I mean, I can say Wikipedia. People will know what that construct is. But to know what's in every single page of that. So I had this download, felt energy drawing down, felt kind of like the string getting thinner and thinner, pulling away from my forehead. And then there was this jolt. And I woke up in a hospital bed. And somebody had come in to restock the linens in the room, and they had hit my bed with a cart. And there I was. So I realize I'm no longer just reading my journal, but I'm paraphrasing the journal, and I guess that's okay. But I say that instantly I was back in the prison of my corporeal confinement. All the memories, baggage, and pain came rushing back to greet me. It sucked. It sucked like nothing had sucked before. And at this point, I had turned off life support on my dad, declared bankruptcy, was in a shitty marriage, was so weak I could not lift my head. I closed my eyes and I tried to will myself out of my body. Now, man, it was a long time ago. I've never tried to project to heaven. I've tried to project to 3D space, future and past. But I've never tried to project to another dimension or another dimensional reality. I obviously didn't go to heaven, but I did remember the snowflake. And mentally, it's like I wanted to jump off a cliff. And so I did. But instead of trying to jump to heaven, I was trying to jump to that snowflake. And so I tried to project to that snowflake. And I ended up landing in a hole somewhere in the desert near the Four Corners region of the Southwest United States. And I would encounter another version of George Carlin. We'll do that in part 3. Thanks for listening.